These dates really throw everybody off. They make a conundrum for everybody's side. Anyone that would trust a dating method that's 50% accurate is stupid as well. The genetic evidence is where we go. The genetic evidence is what destroys evolution. So if they can't even remotely get to their time frame, but yet it lands exactly on ours, I mean, come on, you can't get better than that.
Genesis does teach a global flood, but it's simply wrong. He's admitting to people Genesis teaches a global flood, but it's not true because we know scientifically it didn't happen. So he's saying that the Bible's full of errors.
Guess what? These dates really throw everybody off. They make a conundrum for everybody's side, right? If we're saying it's old, young, and it dates old, it's confusing. If they're saying it's old and then they keep finding other things like this, it's a problem for every side. So I just say don't trust the dates at all. They admit that they're wrong the vast majority of time. If I said, hey, we're going to go to the casino later, we're going to put it all on red, you'd be like, what? No. That's like not even 50% accurate. And anyone that would trust a dating method that's 50% accurate is stupid as well. I'm sorry. That's just the way it is. So now the genetic evidence is where we go. The genetic evidence is what destroys evolution. That's why they try to run to these other random things as fast as they can, because they love the fossil record. It's wiggle worm. You can tell any story you want in the fossil record. But when you get into genetics, they just lose. So when did this bottleneck happen? Donnie can mention that, go over that later, because he's going to get into genetics, and we go straight to mutation rates, because mutation rates are the literal clock that's inside of our bodies that's been ticking away, and we can travel backwards in time and go right back to Eve. And we can do the same thing with animals. And the same result happens every single time we go back to a recent ancestor, to an animal on the ark. None of them even remotely get close to even a 200,000 year time frame of the evolutionary rate. So if they can't even remotely get to their time frame, but yet it lands exactly on ours, I mean, come on, you can't get better than that. So genetics is where it's at. And that's why Donnie and I love genetics so much.
Two things, I guess, Donnie, you're going to present that next now?
Yes, but I did want to bring to the forefront, Matt, he put out a well-researched video, I think a couple of years ago, Matt, on the Shroud of Turin and showing that it's legit. But I wanted to say, because this is important, Matt, going back to what you said closer to the beginning of your presentation, I found it really interesting that you utilize AI or ChatGPT to analyze a lot of these drawings that we find on caves and that we find depicted in ancient civilizations, and also the descriptions that are offered on these great dragons, these great serpents, from people like Alexander the Great, Marco Polo, Herodotus, so on and so forth. And you gave that to AI to answer objectively. And what did AI conclude? That, yeah, these sound like dinosaurs. One of them, I think, was an Allosaurus,
right?
It clearly was. And so you'll have skeptics say, well, no, that's not a dinosaur because maybe this inaccuracy, or you dismantle the point that where the critics would say, well, maybe they found dinosaur fossils and then depicted the fossils, but you don't just find the entirety of a dinosaur skeleton just sitting out of the ground where you can then depict it as accurately as they do. They might find a bone or two. They might find just the head, which means they would draw everything else inaccurately. But the fact that these depictions are so true to what we understand dinosaurs look like is fascinating evidence that man and dinosaur coexisted, because if they didn't, how are they depicting them and describing them so accurately?
Yeah, matter of fact, here's a perfect example of that. The Romans themselves, because they excavated so much building their city, they actually came across giant mastodon or woolly mammoth bones. And when they did, what did they think they were? They reconstructed them as giant cyclops.
Cyclops, yeah.
Because they didn't find their tusks. So they stood them up and they said, wow, that was a 30-foot human. That was a gigantic cyclops, because it looks like they have one eye, right? So they didn't even know what they were doing. And they were way more sophisticated than some Native American band of people out there living out there that drew Brontosaurus. I mean, come on, right?
Yeah. Okay, well, here we go. I remember before I was a young Earth creationist and I saw all of those depictions, the artwork, the descriptions of creatures that are obviously dinosaurs. It just blew my mind. I couldn't believe that this information was hidden from me for so many years, Sam.
You did make a comment that it was because the Lord Jesus Christ used Ken Hovind mightily in those years to get you to see that the facts of science does confirm the scriptures. You made a comment earlier. I was going to bring it up, but I didn't want to put it on because I didn't want to hide this his images. So God did use Ken Hovind early in your life, huh?
Absolutely. I first came to the world of Christianity watching generalized debates, Sam. Debates with Christian apologists like John Lennox, who did a great job at just demolishing atheism, showing why the general Christian picture is true. William Lane Craig as well. Yeah. I believe they struggled once we got into the details about origins and evolution and so on and so forth. And then when I discovered Kent, when he did all those university debates, dozens and dozens of debates in the universities, one of them was a 3-on-1. He did another one with Michael Shermer. And I was looking at this completely objectively because I was wondering, okay, is the earth old? Is the earth young? Debates that I was familiar with were with people like William Lane Craig, who's a theistic evolutionist, John Lennox, old earth creationist. And so I was familiar with their arguments. I liked them. But then when I watched Kent demolish university professor after university professor, he demolished 3 at the same time. He was a great influence in my shift towards young earth creation.
Oh my God. And even Craig, I heard recently, says Genesis does teach a global flood, but it's simply wrong.
Right.
So Craig, William Lane Craig, why say the man's dangerous? Like, you guys can stone me for it. You can hate me for it. He's done some great things destroying atheism. He's done some great things showing that the resurrection of Christ is an historical fact. All the evidence points to Christ being raised. But when it comes to his view of the Trinity, of Christ being God in the flesh, about Genesis, my goodness, how much heresy can someone espouse before you say enough is enough? We cannot recognize him. Now, that's between him and God. I don't determine salvation. I may end up in hell. I may be deceived. May Jesus have mercy on all of us. But I'm talking about from this side of glory, how much heresy can someone espouse before you say, man, this guy's more dangerous than good? He's admitting to people Genesis teaches a global flood, but it's not true, because we know scientifically it didn't happen. So he's saying that the Bible's full of errors. Yeah,
I don't get it, because he's not convinced. And we've done a couple of responses to him on this. And in our last seminar we did with you, Sam, we went over quotes. One specific, Frank Zindler, during his debate with William Lane Craig, was pointing out how nonsensical the theistic evolution position is. And that's why the young earth creation, special creation position is the most consistent. For William Lane Craig to basically say, well, the Bible clearly teaches a worldwide flood. Isn't that wild? But we know science has told us or informed us that a global flood is impossible, even though he's never addressed the scientific data that we've been presenting. So he just asserts it, which means the Bible must be wrong, and therefore the flood account must be symbolic or allegorical in some way. I mean, that's dangerous. I agree with you, Sam.
Oh, it's very dangerous. In fact, someone called him out. He's a young earth creationist. I had the clip. I played it. I forgot his name. He said that he was there at his wedding. What was his name?
Terry Mortensen.
Because he said he was there actually at his wedding and they're friends. And he said, look, I'm going to challenge you. Let's have a debate on whether science confirms the global flood. And this is Craig's friend who was there when he got married. He's calling him out. Kudos to him. Glory to Jesus Christ. Though he loves Craig, he loves Jesus more. Kudos to him.
Amen.
So there
Jesus first. Dr. Terry Mortensen does great work. He debated Hugh Ross recently, actually did a fantastic job. I've got one of his books behind me. It's called Searching for Adam. And so Terry Mortensen from AIG, he's really good at the biblical arguments and the biblical exegesis. So William Lane Craig should accept the challenge. I don't know what he's waiting for. He likes to attack young earth creationists, but I haven't actually seen him debate an informed young earth creationist yet.
I don't think he will. In fact, in the debate between Ken Hovind and Hugh Ross, he called them huge loss. I mean, I've seen him call him huge loss.
Yeah, right. You bring up Hugh Ross. Well, when you have Kent on, because we've already confirmed that he would love to come on, you can mention Hugh Ross to him, and he will say, "Oh, huge loss." I mean, Hugh Ross.
Exactly. I actually watched this debate he had on John Ankerberg, because John Ankerberg is a huge old Earth creationist apologist, and I wanted you, Ross, to win because I didn't know any better. Because Norm Geisler was a big influence on me. Just to give you a little background. Norm Geisler was an old earther, so he was a huge influence in the beginning when I started studying apologetics. But as I studied the evidence, no, I can't be old earth. I can't. It's just impossible. I can't do it. So, brethren, let me follow your lead. I took too much of your time.
To complement what Matt was saying and to expand. So right here's a program I recommend everybody check out. This is with Dr. Andrew Snelling. He was a lead scientist in the RAPE project that I discussed. He's a geologist. He worked many years for Answers in Genesis. He was, I think he was the director of research actually a few years as well. He's probably the best geologist, if not one of the best that we have in the world of young earth creation. Well published, well credentialed. He's a genius. And so he has run a ton of experiments. He himself has done, made testable predictions that have been confirmed. And anyways, so in this talk, he covers much of his work and much of the research in the conventional literature. Matt touched on this, where when it comes to dating methods, for example, Mount St. Helens. So we have newly formed rocks from known volcanic eruptions in a lot of our lifetimes. Okay. And so these rocks form and they're tested and they should come up at relatively new, right? They were just formed. So they date these rocks using potassium to argon. Potassium would be your parent element or isotope, and then it decays. So your unstable isotopes decay into a stable daughter isotope. So potassium to argon, that's what K to AR means. Anyways, so they test these rocks, newly formed, and they come back at, notice this in Andrew Snelling's slide, close to 1 million years for newly formed rocks. You can look right in the conventional literature, all these known lava flows, and you can see the incorrect date, 32 million years, 8 million years. These rocks were just formed. And so the point is, why would we trust dates derived from rocks of unknown age in the distant past? Evolutionists claim, well, these rocks formed millions to billions of years ago. We didn't see them form, but the dates we get are hundreds of millions of years. It's like, well, wait a minute. We can't even get dates right for rocks of known age that we've seen form in real time. We get millions of years oftentimes for newly formed rocks, which means there's inheritance from the mantle, most likely, where these daughter isotopes are making their way in, which falsifies these assumptions behind dating methods. So why would we trust dates you're giving us for rocks of unknown age? Doesn't make any sense. And then the C14 data, of course, suggests that the Earth is young because we wouldn't find C14 in the first place if the Earth really were old. So to further complement what Matt was saying, Matt, such good information. That's why we pay Matt the big bucks. He does a great job. And so notice this, these are flume tank experiments. We did a seminar a couple of years ago, conference with creation geologist, John Mackay, the creation guy. He's in Australia and he's actually run these experiments himself with flume tanks. So they're flume tank experiments. And these have also been run by numerous secular geology labs. And they repeatedly show that sedimentary layers form rapidly under flowing water. You can see in this tank here, these layers are forming in real time. Well-defined sedimentary, these fine layers here, graded bedding, cross bedding, all appear in minutes, not millions of years. And so what these experiments demonstrate is that layering is actually a hydraulic process through moving flowing water and not a time-dependent process. Okay. And so if you apply this to the year-long flood, well, this demonstrates that large sedimentary rocks can form rapidly, where we can find these fine layers of stratification occurring in real time. And we've demonstrated that, as you can see here, with these real-time experiments. Really, really fascinating stuff. And so, okay, let's continue on here. Dinosaur soft tissue. So clearly, the evidence for man and dinosaur coexisting, as Matt went over, is extremely powerful. If man described dinosaur, the Bible describes dinosaur with a behemoth, tail like a cedar. Old earthers will try and say, oh, that might be a hippo or an elephant. I mean, you ever seen their tail? It's like a wet noodle. Certainly not comparable to a cedar, but the descriptions simply don't fit behemoth or even Leviathan, they'll try and say or assert is an alligator, or they'll say it's a mythical creature, even though God says to Job, behold, now Behemoth. Would he be saying, behold, a mythical, not real creature? No, clearly this has to be something real that Job can see and touch. Okay. And so all of these historical records that Matt went over where man is describing dinosaur, the word dinosaur didn't come about until, between the 16 and 1800s. So they used different words before to describe these kinds of creatures. A common word was dragon. Okay. So dinosaur soft tissue. This is incredible. You can go to ICR. And why I have ICR listed is because a researcher from ICR, Dr. Brian Thomas, he's actually published in the secular literature. So again, this isn't all just creationist resources. We have creation scientists that are making discoveries and publishing in the conventional literature. And we have over 140 examples now. We have dozens of peer-reviewed secular science that are reporting original biomaterials, soft tissue, proteins, collagen, cells, blood vessel-like structures. It's incredible. And fossils, like in T-Rex, claim to be millions of years old. How in the world, based on what we know about biochemistry, brothers, could these original biomaterials still be there for us to discover, analyze, and study? If these fossils were millions of years old, they should have decayed away. They've done experiments to see, even in the best case scenarios, how long can collagen last? And even in your best case scenarios, which means these wouldn't even apply to the real world in the past, but let's just give it to the evolutionists. The best you have is 500,000 years. And people might say, oh, well, that's a lot longer than 6,000 years. No, you're missing the point. That's the best case scenario. Yet we find collagen preserved in dinosaur fossils claim to be 500,000 years. No, 65 million years old. And so these finds challenge the expectation that such organic substances must decay long before geological ages. Fossils reported include dinosaurs, turtles, marine worms, insects, and more, all showing features of unmineralized organic material. If the flood is true, then we'd expect these creatures to be rapidly buried, rapidly fossilized, because fossilization is a delicate process. It requires very particular, very specific circumstances. And so, of course, if these creatures are rapidly fossilized due to rapid burial, then we'd expect these soft tissues to be preserved. And since it's only been for 4,500 years roughly, then of course it makes sense that we find them. If true, the presence of hardly altered soft tissue argues for a much shorter time frame than conventional deep time. The endurance of original biomaterials strongly suggests exceptional preservation conditions or a younger age, which, as we can see from experimental data, is the more parsimonious explanation. We have no problem as young Earth creationists. As I said earlier, we can sit back, relax, discuss this data, sip on a coffee, because it fits beautifully well with the young Earth model. These data form part of a larger, irreducible preservation question. Here's the question I want you guys to ask old Earthers and theistic evolutionists. Save this. How could delicate biochemicals remain intact for hundreds of millions of years under normal geologic conditions? You'll see that their answer is typically composed of rescue device after rescue device, or a lot of dodging. These findings encourage fresh investigation into fossilization mechanisms and challenge standard assumptions about decay rates. Notice how, regardless of what we're looking at, we've been going for a few hours now and we've touched on biology, genetics, astronomy. We've touched on chemistry. We've looked at dating methods. We've looked at geology. No matter what field we look at in science, it all comes back to one conclusion, that the earth is young. God created the heaven and the earth, Genesis 1:1, and we are not related to mosquitoes, worms, and banana plants. The evolutionists, there's videos out on YouTube from popular evolutionists. They'll say, oh, limestone precludes young earth creation. Creationists can't explain all the limestone we find on the planet. They're completely wrong. We're going to pulverize that assertion here. Limestone doesn't need time. It needs concentration. And so what we see with the global flood and the fountains of the great deep breaking open, We have incredible evidence, as we've gone over so far, for catastrophic plate tectonics, worldwide sedimentary rock layers, these cold slabs of rock that we find deep within the earth. And they haven't melted yet. They should have, if the earth really is old. And so you'd have these chemicals, you'd have the perfect recipe during the flood to rapidly form limestone. We can even see that today. Okay. And so the flood produced exactly the chemistry required: warm water, supersaturation, CO2 rich volcanic fluids, hydrothermal circulation. Secular geologists have observed chemical limestone forming in years, not millions. If modern limestone forms fast, flood generated limestone forms even faster. Deep time not required. Remember this: not time, but a process. Not time, but a process. The worldwide Genesis flood allows for all the necessary processes to rapidly form things that evolutionists or deep time proponents say the young earth model can't account for, like limestone, like these sedimentary rock layers, like caves. Okay, so do caves require deep time? No. We observe stalactites, stalagmites, and cave formations forming rapidly under the right conditions. And so it's the rate of mineral-rich water flow, not time, that determines how fast they grow. Global flood, again, 2 Peter 3, Sam, Matt, and I exegeted 2 Peter 3 extensively during our last seminar. And we went over the fact that the scoffers in the last days will deny three things: the special creation, the global flood, right? The world that then was being overflowed with water that perished, and the coming judgment by fire. The third event, coming judgment by fire, is not coming to a local city near you. This is going to be a worldwide, universal, local or judgment by fire, which means the best understanding of the second event, the world that then was being overflowed with water that perished, would also be worldwide and universal. Okay. And so critics or scoffers deny the flood, which means they're denying the event in Earth's history that has the necessary processes to actually rapidly form things that they say we can't explain. It's incredible. Helium and zircon crystals. Oh, I love this one. This one's irrefutable, just like the C14. So going back to the RATE team, the RATE project, they made another prediction when they looked at these zircon crystals. Okay, so when uranium decays into lead, as a byproduct, as you can see here in the visual, is helium. Helium is a very slippery atom. It moves through the rocks quickly and escapes into the atmosphere. Okay. And creation scientists made a prediction when they tested these zircon crystals that are supposedly billions of years old. And they said, well, we have two positions: old Earth, young Earth. Depending on how much helium we find, because think about it, if helium moves quickly into the atmosphere, leaves the rocks quickly. Okay. If these zircon crystals really are billions of years old, we can make a pretty simple prediction. If these zircons are billions of years old, we should find very little helium, because over billions of years, uranium decaying into lead, uranium being your parent isotope, lead being your daughter. As that process goes, the decay chain, you have helium atoms as a byproduct being produced. Okay. Well, then the helium should have mostly escaped into the atmosphere. We shouldn't really find any helium, or perhaps we just find a little bit. If we find an abundance of helium, well, then those zircons can't be billions of years old. Well, it turns out they did the study. They looked at the zircon, sent it to a top of the line professional lab. And from my understanding, the laboratory, those performing the experiments, when they found out afterwards that this was in favor of young Earth creation, those young Earth creation scientists that were carrying this out, they weren't too happy. Well, sorry, this is what the data suggests, that there's too much helium in these rocks for millions to billions of years. As you can see, got the zircon crystals, the helium is escaping. And so the RATE scientists, they concluded based on these studies that if you actually look at the rate of helium diffusion and how much helium was found in these zircon crystals, okay, if you look at the leakage rate, this is empirical scientific data, a real experiment, these are real numbers, then the Earth, based on this data, can only be 6,000 to 10,000 years. That's incredible. because there's far too much helium in these zircon crystals. We shouldn't find as much as we do. Distant starlight. We want this seminar to be comprehensive. We've all heard that, well, how can the universe be 6,000 years old if we see stars and galaxies billions of light years away? Doesn't it take billions of years for the light to reach us, to reach our eyes? Firstly, distant starlight. That's a distance, not necessarily a time. But we've had, and I got his book behind me, Dr. Jason Lisle, again, PhD astrophysicist. He wrote an excellent book, The Physics of Einstein, where he debunked this challenge using the physics of Einstein, known science. Okay. And so his model is the ASC model. And it shows that the so-called distant starlight problem is really about how we measure time, not how light travels. The one-way speed of light can't be measured. Only the round trip can. Therefore, if light travels instantaneously toward Earth, okay? So what this means in layman's terms is that based on what we know about the physics of Einstein, okay, and how we measure time and how we look at light, light from even the most distant galaxies can be reaching our eyes instantaneously. Dr. Jason Lisle did an excellent job in his debate recently with Hugh Ross, where Hugh Ross had no good counter to this. And so notice this: if light travels instantly toward Earth, as the Bible may imply, the anisotropic synchrony convention, we're seeing deep space in real time. Believe it or not, it's fully consistent with Einstein's physics and removes the starlight problem altogether. So notice this concept: two-way versus one-way speed of light. We can only measure the round trip speed. The one-way speed depends on our chosen synchronization convention, Jason Lisle's model. Light travels instantly towards Earth, but slower away. So instantly towards Earth, which is the way it has to be for Adam and Eve to see the stars at creation. Okay, a valid choice under relativity. Result, we see distant starlight as it happens, no distant light time problem. Scientific status. Is this just ad hoc? Is this really based on science? Yes. Fully consistent with Einstein. Can't be falsified because it's a convention, not a measurable variable. The distant starlight problem is about the measurement of the two-way speed of light, but not the one-way speed. And so as we're looking at the most distant galaxies and stars, we're seeing it in real time. And this goes back to the James Webb Space Telescope data, where even your most distant galaxies are fully mature, fully functional, just like our galaxy that we live in, the Milky Way galaxy, showing that cosmological evolution or the Big Bang theory is false, because those galaxies in the most distant parts of the universe should be lesser evolved. But no, they look like they were specially created, predicted by a young Earth creationist. Okay, let's get into the hominin fossils. This is a very interesting one. At the beginning of the show, we had a few people talking about Lucy. So these so-called extinct transitional forms, a little bit of human, a little bit of ape. Well, firstly, if you look at chimps today, okay, according to evolutionists, there's your cousin. I mean, just go to the zoo, go look at, and it's interesting because they'll say, well, a good line of evidence for evolution is that we look so similar to a chimp. We share more in genetics with a chimp than we do with a banana. It's like, take your 5-year-old to the zoo, tell your 5-year-old to run around the zoo, and don't tell them anything about creation evolution. Tell them to pick out the one animal that we look most similar to. You think they're going to come back and point to a fish or an alligator or a bird or a banana plant? Oh, they're going to point to some kind of ape.